Hello there, and welcome to this quiet corner of the universe where we explore the gentle mysteries of science together. I'm so glad you've chosen to spend this evening with me, settling into a comfortable space where curiosity meets tranquility. Perhaps you're lying in bed right now, with soft pillows cradling your head, or maybe you're curled up in your favorite chair with a warm blanket wrapped around you. Wherever you are, take a moment to let your shoulders drop, to release any tension you've been carrying from the day. Tonight, we're going to embark on a peaceful journey through one of the most fascinating what-if scenarios in all of science. We're going to imagine, very gently, what might happen if our Earth simply stopped spinning, not with any violence or catastrophe, but as if the universe itself decided to slow our planet's rotation until it came to a perfect, serene stillness. This isn't a story of destruction, but rather a meditation on the delicate dance our planet performs every single day, spinning through space at over 1,000 miles per hour without us even noticing. As we explore this together, I want you to breathe deeply and let your mind wander into this imaginary world. Think of it as the most soothing documentary you've ever encountered, where each detail unfolds like a gentle wave lapping at the shore. We'll discover how the winds might whisper differently, how the sun and moon would paint new patterns across the sky, and how life itself might adapt to this profound change in the most graceful ways imaginable. There's something deeply comforting about understanding the world around us, about knowing the invisible forces that cradle us as we sleep each night. The Earth's rotation is one of these invisible gifts, so constant and reliable that we rarely pause to appreciate its wonder. Tonight, by imagining its absence, we'll come to understand just how precious this gentle spinning really is. So close your eyes if you'd like, or let your gaze soften as we begin this journey together. Let the rhythm of these words carry you into a state of peaceful curiosity, where science becomes poetry and knowledge becomes a lullaby. We have all the time in the world to explore this question. No need to rush. No need to worry about anything beyond this moment of quiet discovery. Imagine, if you will, a moment unlike any other in Earth's 4.5 billion year history. Picture our beautiful blue marble, suspended in the velvet darkness of space, gradually slowing its eternal dance. For eons, Earth has been spinning on its axis once every 24 hours, a rotation so smooth and constant that we've built our entire understanding of time around it. But in our gentle thought experiment, something changes. Perhaps it's the touch of some cosmic force we don't yet understand, or maybe it's simply the universe deciding to show us something new. Whatever the cause, Earth's rotation begins to slow, so gradually at first that no one notices. The change starts imperceptibly, like the way evening light fades so slowly you don't realize it's happening until you suddenly notice you need to turn on a lamp. Atomic clocks around the world, those incredibly precise timekeepers in laboratories and satellites, would be the first to detect this change. They would notice that Earth's days are getting longer by just fractions of a second at first, then by seconds, then by minutes. But for now, let's imagine this happens slowly enough that life can adapt gently and naturally. In this first moment of true stillness, when Earth's rotation finally comes to a complete and peaceful stop, something remarkable occurs. The planet finds itself in perfect balance, one side facing the warm embrace of the sun while the other side turns toward the cool vastness of space filled with stars. It's as if Earth has decided to pause and take a deep breath, holding this moment like a meditation. Standing on the surface during this transition, you might notice the strangest sensation, or perhaps you wouldn't notice anything at all. The stopping is so gradual, so gentle, that it feels natural, like settling into the deepest, most restful sleep. The ground beneath your feet, which has been hurtling through space at incredible speed for your entire life, finally finds a state of serene stillness. It's the kind of quiet that you feel in your bones, a profound peace that seems to emanate from the very core of the planet. If you were to step outside in this moment, you might pause and wonder why everything feels different, even though you can't quite put your finger on what has changed. The trees still stand where they always have, The buildings remain in their places, the rivers continue to flow downhill, as they always have. But there's something in the air, a quality of stillness that goes deeper than just the absence of wind. It's as if the entire world has decided to hold its breath, to pause and wonder at its own existence. The first thing you might notice is how the shadows have stopped moving. Throughout your entire life, shadows have been your constant companions in this slow dance with the sun, stretching and shrinking, shifting and rotating as Earth spins. But now, in this new stillness, the shadows have found their final positions and decided to stay there, like actors who have found their mark and are content to remain in place. The shadow of your garden fence, the long shadow of the oak tree in your yard, the way the sunlight slants through your bedroom window, all of these have become permanent fixtures, painted onto the world with light and darkness. In this new world of stillness, the winds begin to tell a different story entirely. For all of human history, our planet's rotation has been the great conductor of the atmospheric orchestra, creating the trade winds, the jet streams, and all the swirling patterns of air that dance around our globe. The Coriolis effect, that gentle force born from Earth's spinning, has been twisting and turning our winds into spirals and curves, creating the weather systems that bring rain to some places and sunshine to others. But now, in this profound quiet, the atmosphere must learn a new song. Imagine stepping outside on what would have been a typical Tuesday morning, expecting perhaps a gentle breeze to greet you as it always has. Instead, you find the air around you remarkably still, not with the oppressive stillness of a humid summer day, but with something far more profound. It's as if the entire atmosphere has paused to listen to some cosmic whisper that only it can hear. The leaves on the trees, which might have been rustling just moments before in the familiar rhythm of wind, now hang motionless, each one perfectly positioned as if arranged by an artist's careful hand. But this stillness doesn't last forever, because the atmosphere is like a living thing, always seeking balance, always responding to the subtle differences in temperature and pressure that exist across our planet's surface. Without the spinning of Earth to complicate things, the winds begin to discover simpler patterns, more direct pathways from the warm places to the cool places. The sun, still shining steadily on one half of our stilled planet, begins to warm the air above the daylight side. This warm air, lighter and more buoyant than the cooler air around it, starts to rise in great, slow columns, like invisible towers of warmth reaching toward the sky. On the other side of our planet, where night has become permanent and the stars shine down on a landscape cooling slowly in the darkness, the air grows denser and begins to sink, settling toward the ground like a gentle blanket. Between these two halves of the world, something beautiful begins to happen. The warm air from the day side, having risen high into the atmosphere, begins to flow slowly toward the night side, carrying with it the gift of the sun's warmth. Meanwhile, down near the surface, cooler air from the night side begins to flow gently toward the day side, like a river of coolness moving to balance the warmth. This creates what we might imagine as the planet's new breathing pattern, a slow, steady circulation of air that flows from day to night and back again. It's not the chaotic swirl of weather systems we're used to, with their hurricanes and tornadoes and constantly changing fronts. Instead, it's more like the gentle, rhythmic breathing of someone in deep, peaceful sleep. The air moves with purpose but without urgency, following the simple law that warm air rises and cool air flows in to take its place. If you were to stand somewhere along this great boundary between day and night, you might feel this new wind as a constant, gentle presence. It wouldn't come in gusts or die away to nothing as winds do in our spinning world. Instead, it would flow past you with the steady persistence of a river, always moving in the same direction, always carrying the same message of balance and harmony. You might find yourself becoming accustomed to this constant companion, this wind that never changes its mind about which direction it wants to blow. The sound of this wind would be different too, without the complex interactions that create the howling and whistling we're familiar with. This new wind might whisper more softly, carrying sounds farther and more clearly than ever before. You might hear the gentle chime of wind bells from a neighbor's garden, even if they live miles away, because the sound could travel on this steady river of air without being twisted and scattered by chaotic gusts. Bird songs might carry for incredible distances, creating a natural communication network that spans continents. As days pass in this new world, though the concept of days would need to be redefined now, the atmosphere continues to settle into its new rhythm. The great circulation patterns become more established, more predictable. Weather, as we've known it, begins to simplify. Instead of the swirling complexity of storm systems that chase each other around the globe, weather becomes more of a gradient, a gentle transition from the warm, rising air of the day's side to the cool, settling air of the night's side. Rain, when it comes, might fall in soft, steady patterns rather than the dramatic downpours and scattered showers we're used to. It would be the kind of rain that falls so gently you barely notice it beginning, the kind that nourishes the earth without any drama or fanfare. The clouds, too, would find new patterns in this simplified world, without the spinning of the planet to twist them into spirals and scatter them across the sky. Clouds might form in long, elegant streams that flow from the day's side toward the night's side, like rivers of vapor flowing through the sky. These cloud rivers might persist for weeks or months, creating permanent pathways of shade and moisture across the landscape below. Some areas might find themselves living under the constant, gentle protection of these cloud streams, while others remain in perpetual clear skies, each region finding its own unique relationship with this new atmospheric dance. In our gently stilled world, perhaps no change is more profound or more beautiful than the new relationship between light and darkness. Throughout all of human history, day and night have been partners in an endless dance, chasing each other around the globe as our planet spins. We've structured our lives around this rhythm, our bodies attuned to the rising and setting of the sun, our activities synchronized with the great metronome of Earth's rotation. But now, in this peaceful stillness, day and night have decided to stop dancing and simply embrace, each claiming its own half of the world in a permanent, gentle balance. Imagine waking up on the first morning after Earth has stopped spinning. Though morning and evening are concepts that will need new meaning now. If you're fortunate enough to live on what we might call the day side of this new world, you wake to find the sun in exactly the same position it was when you went to sleep. There it hangs in the sky, perhaps high overhead if you live near what was once the subsolar point, or lower toward the horizon if your home is farther from the center of permanent day. The sun no longer traces its familiar arc across the sky, no longer marks the passage of time with its movement. Instead, it has become a fixed star in your personal sky, a constant companion that will shine on your home for as long as you can imagine. The quality of this light is something entirely new in human experience. It's not the changing light of our spinning world, which shifts from the golden warmth of morning to the bright clarity of noon to the soft amber of evening. Instead, it's a steady, unchanging illumination that bathes everything in a consistent glow. If the sun is high in your sky, everything around you is lit with the clear, bright light of eternal noon. Shadows are short and sharp, pointing always in the same direction, never moving, never changing. If the sun sits lower in your sky, everything is bathed in the warm, golden light of perpetual sunset or sunrise, creating a world that exists in a permanent state of magic hour. That time photographers love, when everything glows with honey-colored light. For those who live in this eternal day, life begins to adapt to the constancy of light. Plants, which have spent millions of years learning to follow the sun across the sky, now find themselves in a world where the sun never moves. Sunflowers, those faithful followers of our star, might slowly turn their faces toward the sun and then simply stop, content to gaze in adoration at this fixed point of light. Other plants might begin to grow in new patterns, no longer needing to compete for sunlight that moves throughout the day. Instead, they can specialize, some growing tall in the direct light, others adapting to live in the permanent shadows cast by their neighbors. But perhaps the most profound changes are happening on the other side of our stilled world, where night has become a permanent resident. Here, the sun has disappeared below the horizon, never to return, and the sky has become a vast canvas of stars. Without the light pollution that comes from the day side, and without the constant rotation that makes stars appear to wheel across the sky, the night side becomes an astronomer's paradise. The stars hang in fixed positions, creating a stable, eternal map of the cosmos. Constellations no longer rise and set. Instead, they become permanent features of the sky, as reliable as mountains on the horizon. On this night side, people might discover a completely new relationship with the stars. Children could grow up learning not just the names of constellations, but their exact positions in the unchanging sky. Navigators could use stars as fixed reference points, as reliable as lighthouses. The Milky Way, our galaxy's bright river of stars, would stretch across the sky in a permanent arc, no longer rotating through the seasons, but always there, always beautiful, always inspiring wonder. The boundary between these two worlds, the day side and the night side, becomes one of the most fascinating places on Earth. This Terminator line, as astronomers call it, is where day and night meet in permanent twilight. Here, the sun sits forever on the horizon, painting the sky in colors that never change. Deep purples and soft oranges, pink clouds that never fade, a sunset that lasts forever. This twilight zone would become a ribbon of perpetual magic wrapped around the entire planet, a place where the light is always perfect, never too bright, never too dark. Walking along this boundary, you might experience something no human has ever experienced before: the ability to walk from day into night and back again simply by traveling east or west. You could literally chase the perfect lighting for any activity, moving toward the day side when you need bright light for detailed work, then returning to the gentle twilight or the star-filled darkness when you want to rest or contemplate. Communities might grow up along this Terminator line, taking advantage of this perfect gradient of light, with some buildings extending into the day side for workshops and greenhouses, others reaching into the night side for observatories and quiet spaces for reflection. The people living in this twilight zone might develop entirely new rhythms of life, no longer bound by the cycle of day and night, but free to create their own patterns of activity and rest. They might work during the times when the light is perfect for their tasks, sleep when they feel tired rather than when darkness falls, and gather to watch the eternal sunset whenever they want to be reminded of the beauty of their transformed world. Time itself might take on new meaning here, measured not by the sun's position, but by other rhythms. The slow circulation of the atmosphere, the gradual changes in weather patterns, the cycles of plants and animals as they adapt to this new world of constant light or constant darkness. This is a world where every place has found its own relationship with light, where some regions bask in eternal sunshine, while others rest under perpetual stars, and where the boundary between them has become a place of endless beauty and possibility. In this world where Earth has found its perfect stillness, perhaps no change is more graceful or more profound than what happens to the waters that cover most of our planet's surface. For billions of years, the oceans have been shaped by forces we rarely think about. The subtle but constant influence of Earth's rotation, the way spinning creates currents and tides, the manner in which the Coriolis effect guides water in great circular paths around the ocean basins. But now, in this new era of planetary peace, the waters of Earth are learning an entirely different way to move, to flow, to find their balance in a world that no longer spins. If you've ever stood at the edge of the ocean and watched the waves roll endlessly toward shore, you've witnessed something that seems eternal and unchanging. But those waves, those currents, even the rhythm of the tides themselves, are all children of Earth's rotation. The Great Gulf Stream that carries warm water from the Caribbean toward Europe, the mighty Kuroshio Current that flows along the coast of Japan, the Antarctic Circumpolar Current that circles the bottom of the world, all of these vast rivers in the sea exist because our planet spins. They're the ocean's way of responding to the Coriolis force, that gentle push that comes from living on a rotating sphere. But now, as Earth settles into its new stillness, these ancient patterns begin to change. The transformation doesn't happen suddenly. The ocean is vast and patient, with a memory that spans decades and centuries. Water that was set in motion by forces that no longer exist continues to flow for a while, like a spinning top that gradually slows but doesn't stop immediately. The great currents continue their circular paths around the ocean basins, but without the constant push of the Coriolis effect to maintain them. They begin to slow, to spread, to find new patterns of movement. Imagine watching this transformation from space. If you could see the currents as rivers of different colored water flowing through the blue expanses of the ocean, you would see the tight, focused streams of the major currents gradually broadening, their sharp boundaries becoming softer, their swift flow becoming more leisurely. The Gulf Stream, which once raced northward like a liquid highway, begins to meander more gently, its warm waters spreading in broader, more diffuse patterns. Instead of a focused river of warmth cutting through the cooler Atlantic, it becomes more like a slowly spreading pool of comfortable water, sharing its heat more evenly across the ocean basin. This spreading and slowing of the currents has profound effects on the ocean's ability to distribute heat around the planet. In our spinning world, the currents are like the planet's circulatory system, carrying warm water from the tropics toward the poles and bringing cooler water back toward the equator. This system has been moderating Earth's climate for millions of years, keeping the tropics from becoming too hot and the polar regions from becoming too cold. Now, as the currents slow and spread, this heat distribution becomes more gradual, more diffuse, like the difference between a focused stream of warm water and a gentle, warm bath. But the ocean doesn't become stagnant. Far from it. New patterns of circulation begin to emerge, driven by the same forces that are reshaping the atmosphere. The permanent day side of Earth begins to warm the ocean water beneath it, creating vast areas of rising water as the heated ocean expands and becomes less dense. This warm water rises toward the surface and begins to flow slowly toward the night side of the planet, carrying with it the accumulated heat of the sun. Meanwhile, on the night side, the ocean water cools gradually, becoming denser and sinking toward the deeper layers, creating a slow but steady circulation that spans the entire planet. This new circulation is nothing like the swift, focused currents of our spinning world. Instead, it's more like the slow breathing of the ocean itself, a gentle, planet-wide circulation that takes not hours or days, but weeks and months to complete its cycle. Water warmed by the eternal sun on the day side might take a full season to travel across the ocean toward the night side, carrying with it not just heat, but also nutrients, dissolved gases, and all the microscopic life that makes the ocean a living system. Standing on a beach in this new world, you might notice that the character of the waves has changed as well. The great storm systems that used to race around the planet, whipping up enormous swells that could travel thousands of miles across the ocean, no longer exist in the same way. Instead, waves are generated by the new, gentler wind patterns, those steady flows of air from the day side toward the night side. These waves are different from what we're used to. They're more regular, more predictable, like the slow, steady breathing of a sleeping giant. The waves that do form tend to be longer and lower than the chaotic, storm-driven waves of our spinning world. They roll toward shore with a hypnotic regularity, arriving in sets that might be perfectly spaced, each wave following the last with the precision of a metronome. Standing in the surf, you might find that these waves have a meditative quality, their rhythm so steady and predictable that they seem designed for contemplation rather than the exciting unpredictability of waves driven by distant storms. The tides, too, undergo a remarkable transformation. In our spinning world, the tides are caused primarily by the gravitational pull of the moon, with the sun playing a supporting role. As Earth rotates, each part of the ocean experiences the tide-generating forces of the moon in a complex cycle that creates the familiar pattern of 2 high tides and 2 low tides each day. But now, With Earth no longer rotating, the tidal pattern becomes something entirely different. The moon still orbits Earth, of course, still pulling on the oceans with its gravitational embrace. But now, instead of Earth rotating beneath this tidal bulge, the bulge of water follows the moon around the planet as it orbits. This creates a very different kind of tide, one that moves around the planet like a slow, gentle wave, taking about 24 hours and 50 minutes to complete its circuit. Instead of the rapid rise and fall of water levels we're used to, coastal areas now experience a slow, progressive change as this tidal wave passes by. The water level rising gradually over many hours, then falling just as gradually as the moon's influence moves on to the next part of the planet. For people living near the coast, this new tidal pattern might actually be more predictable and manageable than the old system. Instead of having to time activities around the rapid changes of traditional tides, they could plan around the slow, stately progress of this lunar wave. Harbors and ports could be designed to work with this gentler rhythm, and the constant ebb and flow that characterizes coastal life in our spinning world could be replaced by longer periods of stable water levels punctuated by slow, predictable changes. The deep ocean currents, those vast flows of water that carry nutrients and oxygen from the surface to the deepest parts of the ocean, also find new patterns in this stilled world. In our spinning planet, these deep currents are driven partly by the sinking of cold, dense water near the poles, and partly by the complex interactions of surface currents with underwater topography. Now, with the surface currents changing their patterns and the temperature differences between day side and night side, creating new patterns of heating and cooling, the deep ocean begins its own slow reorganization. Deep water formation might now occur primarily on the night side of the planet, where the ocean's surface cools under the star-filled sky. This cold, dense water would sink slowly toward the ocean floor and begin a leisurely journey toward the day side, where it would eventually rise to replace the warm water flowing back toward the night side. This creates a vast, three-dimensional circulation in the ocean. Warm water flowing toward the night side of the surface, cold water flowing toward the day side in the depths, and vertical mixing occurring as water rises and sinks at different parts of the planet. This new, deep circulation would be much slower than the rapid overturning we see in our spinning world, but it would be remarkably stable and persistent. Water that begins its journey in the depths on the night side might take centuries to complete the circuit back to where it started, carrying with it the chemical signatures and dissolved nutrients that it picked up along the way. This creates an ocean with a very long memory, where changes in one part of the system might not be felt in distant regions for hundreds of years. Marine life, always remarkably adaptable, begins to adjust to these new oceanic conditions. Fish and other sea creatures that once relied on the swift currents for migration routes now discover new pathways through the more gently flowing waters. Some species might find that their traditional migration patterns no longer make sense in this new ocean, while others might discover opportunities to expand their ranges into areas that were previously cut off by swift currents flowing in the wrong direction. The great convergence zones where different currents used to meet, areas that were often rich in marine life because they brought together nutrients and organisms from different parts of the ocean, gradually shift and change. New convergence zones form where the slow, steady flows of the reorganized ocean meet and mix, creating new hotspots of biological activity. These areas might be more stable and persistent than the old convergence zones, providing reliable sources of food and habitat for marine life over much longer periods. Coral reefs, those underwater gardens that depend on clear, warm water and steady currents to bring them food and oxygen, might find new opportunities in this reorganized ocean. With currents flowing more steadily and predictably, and with the general slowing of ocean circulation reducing the chaos and turbulence that can damage delicate reef structures, some reef systems might actually thrive in this new environment. The steady flow of nutrients and the more stable temperature patterns could create ideal conditions for reef growth in areas where it was previously difficult. Even the smallest inhabitants of the ocean, the microscopic plankton that form the base of the marine food web, adapt to these new conditions. Phytoplankton, the tiny plant-like organisms that photosynthesize at the ocean surface, might find their distribution changing as the new current patterns alter where nutrients are available and where light penetrates most effectively. Some species might do better in the steady, predictable conditions of a new ocean, while others might struggle to adapt to the loss of the rapid mixing and stirring that characterized our spinning world's oceans. The seasonal patterns that many marine organisms depend on also change in this new world. In our spinning planet, the changing position of the sun throughout the year creates seasonal variations in ocean temperature, nutrient distribution, and biological activity. Now, with one side of the planet in permanent sun and the other in permanent darkness, these seasonal cycles are replaced by geographic variations. Instead of all parts of the ocean experiencing seasonal changes, different regions develop their own characteristic conditions that remain relatively stable over time. This might lead to an ocean that is more regionally specialized than what we're used to, with different areas developing distinct communities of marine life adapted to their particular conditions. The warm, sunlit waters of the day side might become tropical ecosystems regardless of their latitude, while the cooler waters of the night side might develop characteristics similar to polar seas. The boundary zones between these different regions could become areas of extraordinary diversity, where species from different oceanic environments meet and interact. As months and years pass in this new world, the ocean continues its slow adjustment to the absence of Earth's rotation. The water finds new equilibrium points, new patterns of circulation, new ways of distributing heat and nutrients around the planet. What emerges is an ocean that is perhaps more peaceful than what we've known, with slower, more predictable currents, gentler waves, and circulation patterns that operate on longer timescales but with greater stability. This is an ocean that invites contemplation rather than conquest, one where the rhythms of life are measured not in the frantic pace of tidal cycles and storm seasons, but in the slow, steady pulse of planetary circulation. It's a body of water that has learned to breathe more slowly, to move more deliberately, and to carry its cargo of life and heat and nutrients with the patience of geological time itself. For people living near the coast, this new tidal pattern might actually be more predictable and manageable than the old system. Instead of having to time activities around the rapid changes of traditional tides, they could plan around the slow, stately progress of this lunar wave. Harbors and ports could be designed to work with this gentler rhythm, and the constant ebb and flow that characterizes coastal life in our spinning world could be replaced by longer periods of stable water levels punctuated by slow, predictable changes. The deep ocean currents, those vast flows of water that carry nutrients and oxygen from the surface to the deepest parts of the ocean, also find new patterns in this stilled world. In our spinning planet, these deep currents are driven partly by the sinking of cold, dense water near the poles, and partly by the complex interactions of surface currents with underwater topography. Now, with the surface currents changing their patterns and the temperature differences between day side and night side, creating new patterns of heating and cooling, the deep ocean begins its own slow reorganization. Deep water formation might now occur primarily on the night side of the planet, where the ocean's surface cools under the star-filled sky. This cold, dense water would sink slowly toward the ocean floor and begin a leisurely journey toward the day side, where it would eventually rise to replace the warm water flowing back toward the night side. This creates a vast, three-dimensional circulation in the ocean. Warm water flowing toward the night side at the surface, cold water flowing toward the day side in the depths, and vertical mixing occurring as water rises and sinks at different parts of the planet. This new, deep circulation would be much slower than the rapid overturning we see in our spinning world, but it would be remarkably stable and persistent. Water that begins its journey in the depths on the night side might take centuries to complete the circuit back to where it started, carrying with it the chemical signatures and dissolved nutrients that it picked up along the way. This creates an ocean with a very long memory, where changes in one part of the system might not be felt in distant regions for hundreds of years. Marine life, always remarkably adaptable, begins to adjust to these new oceanic conditions. Fish and other sea creatures that once relied on the swift currents for migration routes now discover new pathways through the more gently flowing waters. Some species might find that their traditional migration patterns no longer make sense in this new ocean, while others might discover opportunities to expand their ranges into areas that were previously cut off by swift currents flowing in the wrong direction. The Great Convergence zones, where different currents used to meet, areas that were often rich in marine life because they brought together nutrients and organisms from different parts of the ocean, gradually shift and change. New convergence zones form where the slow, steady flows of the reorganized ocean meet and mix, creating new hotspots of biological activity. These areas might be more stable and persistent than the old convergence zones, providing reliable sources of food and habitat for marine life over much longer periods. Coral reefs, those underwater gardens that depend on clear, warm water and steady currents to bring them food and oxygen, might find new opportunities in this reorganized ocean. With currents flowing more steadily and predictably, and with the general slowing of ocean circulation reducing the chaos and turbulence that can damage delicate reef structures, some reef systems might actually thrive in this new environment. The steady flow of nutrients and the more stable temperature patterns could create ideal conditions for reef growth in areas where it was previously difficult. Even the smallest inhabitants of the ocean, the microscopic plankton that form the base of the marine food web, adapt to these new conditions. Phytoplankton, the tiny plant-like organisms that photosynthesize at the ocean surface, might find their distribution changing as the new current patterns alter where nutrients are available and where light penetrates most effectively. Some species might do better in the steady, predictable conditions of a new ocean, while others might struggle to adapt to the loss of the rapid mixing and stirring that characterized our spinning world's oceans. The seasonal patterns that many marine organisms depend on also change in this new world. In our spinning planet, the changing position of the sun throughout the year creates seasonal variations in ocean temperature, nutrient distribution, and biological activity. Now, with one side of the planet in permanent sun and the other in permanent darkness, these seasonal cycles are replaced by geographic variations. Instead of all parts of the ocean experiencing seasonal changes, different regions develop their own characteristic conditions that remain relatively stable over time. This might lead to an ocean that is more regionally specialized than what we're used to, with different areas developing distinct communities of marine life adapted to their particular conditions. The warm, sunlit waters of the day side might become tropical ecosystems regardless of their latitude, while the cooler waters of the night side might develop characteristics similar to polar seas. The boundary zones between these different regions could become areas of extraordinary diversity, where species from different oceanic environments meet and interact. As months and years pass in this new world, the ocean continues its slow adjustment to the absence of Earth's rotation. The water finds new equilibrium points, new patterns of circulation, new ways of distributing heat and nutrients around the planet. What emerges is an ocean that is perhaps more peaceful than what we've known, with slower, more predictable currents, gentler waves, and circulation patterns that operate on longer timescales but with greater stability. This is an ocean that invites contemplation rather than conquest, one where the rhythms of life are measured not in the frantic pace of tidal cycles and storm seasons, but in the slow, steady pulse of planetary circulation. It's a body of water that has learned to breathe more slowly, to move more deliberately, and to carry its cargo of life and heat and nutrients with the patience of geological time itself. In this gentle world where Earth has settled into perfect stillness, life itself begins to discover new rhythms, new patterns of existence that unfold like a slow, beautiful symphony played at half speed. For billions of years, every living thing on our planet has danced to the beat of Earth's rotation. The 24-hour cycle that is governed when flowers open, when birds sing, when we feel sleepy or alert, when leaves unfurl toward the morning sun. This circadian rhythm, as scientists call it, has been the fundamental timekeeper of life, more reliable than any clock, more constant than any human institution. But now, in this transformed world, life must learn entirely new ways of keeping time, new ways of organizing itself in a reality where the sun never moves and the stars never wheel across the sky. Imagine walking through a forest in the early days after Earth has stopped spinning. At first glance, everything might seem exactly as it always has. The trees standing tall and proud, their leaves rustling gently in the new patterns of wind, the undergrowth thick with ferns and wildflowers, the familiar sounds of birds and insects creating the soundtrack of the woodland. But as you spend more time in this forest, as you sit quietly on a fallen log and really observe what's happening around you, you begin to notice subtle changes, gentle shifts in behavior that speak to life's remarkable ability to adapt and find new ways of thriving. The trees themselves, those ancient giants that have stood witness to countless sunrises and sunsets throughout their long lives, are among the first to adjust to this new reality. Trees that have spent decades or even centuries slowly turning their branches and leaves to follow the sun's daily journey across the sky now find themselves in a world where the sun has chosen a permanent position. On the day side of our stilled planet, where the sun shines with constant brightness, these trees begin a slow but deliberate reorganization of their canopy. The side of each tree that faces the sun starts to develop more leaves, creating dense clusters of green that capture every photon of available sunlight. Meanwhile, the shaded sides of these trees, no longer expecting their turn in the sun, begin to take on different roles, perhaps developing different types of leaves better suited for the lower light conditions, or growing in ways that support the sun-facing portions of the tree. This gradual transformation creates forests that look subtly different from what we're used to. Instead of the relatively symmetrical crowns that trees develop when they receive sunlight from all directions throughout the day, these trees become beautifully asymmetrical, like natural sculptures shaped by the constant direction of light. Walking through such a forest, you might notice that all the trees seem to be leaning slightly toward the sun, their branches reaching out like arms extended in greeting to their constant celestial companion. The effect is both striking and peaceful, as if the entire forest has aligned itself in a gesture of gratitude toward the light that sustains it. The forest floor, too, undergoes its own quiet transformation. In our spinning world, sunlight filters through the canopy in constantly changing patterns as the sun moves across the sky, creating a shifting mosaic of light and shadow that moves across the ground throughout the day. Different plants have evolved to take advantage of these moving patches of sunlight, timing their growth and their flowering to coincide with the periods when light reaches their particular spot on the forest floor. But now, with the sun fixed in its position, these patterns of light and shadow become permanent features of the landscape. Some areas of the forest floor find themselves in perpetual bright light, where shafts of sunlight stream through gaps in the canopy and create permanent pools of golden illumination. These sunny spots become gardens of sun-loving plants, with flowers that might bloom continuously in the constant light, their petals never needing to close for the night because night never comes to their particular patch of earth. Other areas find themselves in permanent shadow, cool and dim beneath the dense canopy above. These shaded areas develop their own unique character, becoming havens for shade-loving plants, mosses, and ferns that thrive in the consistent, gentle light that filters down through the leaves. The result is a forest that becomes more specialized, more varied in its microenvironments than what we might be used to. Instead of the relatively uniform conditions that exist when sunlight moves across the entire forest floor each day, different areas develop their own distinct characteristics and communities of plants. Walking from a sunny glade to a shaded grove becomes like traveling between different worlds, each with its own mood, its own collection of plants and flowers, its own particular quality of light and atmosphere. The flowering plants in this new world face perhaps the most interesting adjustments. For millions of years, many flowers have timed their opening and closing to the daily cycle of the sun, opening their petals in the morning to attract pollinators and closing them at night to conserve moisture and protect their reproductive organs. Morning glories unfurl with the dawn, for clocks open in the late afternoon. Evening primroses bloom as darkness falls. These daily rhythms are so deeply embedded in their biology that they continue for a while even in constant light or constant darkness, like biological clocks that keep ticking even when there's no external timekeeper to wind them. But gradually, as weeks pass in this new world, these daily rhythms begin to fade and are replaced by other patterns. Some flowers in the constant light of the day side might remain permanently open, their petals spread wide in an eternal welcome to pollinators. Others might develop new rhythms based on different cues, perhaps opening and closing in response to the gentle changes in temperature that occur as the new wind patterns shift, or timing their flowering to coincide with the slow seasonal patterns that still exist even in a world that doesn't spin. On the night side of the planet, where darkness has become permanent, flowering plants face an entirely different challenge. Here, flowers that once opened to greet the morning sun must find new strategies for reproduction. Some might evolve to become more fragrant, attracting pollinators through scent rather than visual display. Others might time their flowering to coincide with the presence of nocturnal pollinators, bats, moths, and other creatures that are active in the darkness. The flowers that bloom in this permanent night might become more exotic, more specialized, developing characteristics that make them particularly attractive to the creatures that can find them in starlight. The boundary region between day and night, that zone of perpetual twilight where the sun sits forever on the horizon, becomes perhaps the most interesting place for flowering plants. Here, in the soft, golden light that never changes, flowers might find the perfect conditions for continuous blooming. The light is bright enough to support photosynthesis, but gentle enough that flowers don't need to close to avoid the harsh heat of full sun. This twilight zone could become a ribbon of perpetual gardens wrapped around the planet, where flowers bloom in endless profusion and the air is always sweet with their fragrance. The trees and flowers are not the only living things adapting to this new world. The birds, those masters of timing who have always known exactly when to sing their dawn chorus and when to settle down for the night, must also learn new patterns of behavior. In our spinning world, most birds are either diurnal, active during the day, or nocturnal, active at night, with their activity patterns closely tied to the presence or absence of sunlight. But now, with one side of the planet in permanent day and the other in permanent night, birds must make some fundamental decisions about how to live their lives. On the day side, where the sun shines constantly, many diurnal birds might initially be confused by the absence of their familiar daily rhythms. The robins that once sang at dawn might not know when dawn is supposed to be. The hawks that hunted during the day might not understand when the day begins and ends. But gradually, these birds develop new patterns of activity. Some might become active in cycles that are based on their internal biological clocks rather than the external cycle of day and night. A robin might sing for a few hours, then rest for a few hours, then sing again, creating its own personal rhythm in a world that no longer provides the external cues it once relied on. Other birds might base their activity patterns on different environmental cues, perhaps becoming active when the temperature is cooler and resting when it's warmer, or timing their activities to coincide with the movements of their prey or the availability of food. The result might be a more diverse and complex pattern of bird activity, with different species creating their own unique schedules that reflect their particular needs and preferences. On the night side of the planet, nocturnal birds suddenly find themselves in an environment that seems perfectly suited to their preferences. Owls, nighthawks, and other creatures of the darkness no longer need to wait for sunset to begin their activities. Instead, they can hunt and forage and go about their business in a world of permanent night, perhaps becoming more active and successful than they ever were in our spinning world. These nightside bird communities might flourish and diversify, developing new behaviors and new specializations that take advantage of the constant darkness. The migration patterns of birds, those incredible journeys that span continents and connect distant parts of the world, also undergo significant changes. Many birds migrate based on seasonal changes in daylight and temperature, flying thousands of miles to find the conditions they need for breeding or feeding. In this new world, where different regions have permanently different conditions rather than seasonally changing ones, migration might become more about finding the right geographic location rather than timing arrivals and departures with the seasons. Birds might establish permanent territories in the zones that best suit their needs, whether that's the constant warmth of the day side, the cool darkness of the night side, or the perfect twilight conditions of the boundary zone. Some bird species might become more nomadic, moving freely between different climate zones as their needs change. A bird that needs bright light for finding food might spend time on the day side during its feeding periods, then travel to the cooler night side when it needs to rest or molt. The perpetual twilight zone might become a major highway for bird travel, a region where conditions are never too extreme and where different species can meet and interact as they move between the day and night sides of the planet. The insects, those incredibly diverse and adaptable creatures that form such a crucial part of most ecosystems, also find new opportunities in this transformed world. Many insects have life cycles that are closely tied to daily rhythms. Butterflies that are active during the day, moths that fly at night, bees that time their foraging trips to coincide with the opening of flowers. In the new world, these patterns become more flexible and varied. On the day side, butterflies might find themselves in paradise, with constant sunlight to warm their wings and flowers that bloom continuously to provide nectar. Some butterfly species might become more active and successful than ever before, their populations growing as they take advantage of the improved conditions. Bees, too, might thrive in the constant light, able to forage continuously rather than being limited to daylight hours. The result might be more abundant pollination services for plants and more diverse insect communities. On the night side, moths and other nocturnal insects face similar opportunities. Without the interruption of daylight, they might develop more complex and varied behavior patterns, perhaps becoming more active and diverse than they were when they had to hide during the day. The permanent darkness might allow for the evolution of new relationships between nocturnal insects and the plants that depend on them for pollination. Perhaps most interesting are the insects that live in the twilight zone between day and night. Here, in the perpetual golden light of eternal sunset, insects might find conditions that are perfect for activity, bright enough to see clearly, but not so bright as to be harsh or overwhelming. This zone might become a hotspot of insect diversity and activity, with species from both the day side and night side meeting and interacting in ways that were never possible in our spinning world. The mammals of this new world face their own unique adaptations. Many mammals are crepuscular, meaning they're most active during the twilight hours of dawn and dusk. In our spinning world, these periods of perfect lighting conditions are brief, lasting only an hour or two each day. But in the stilled world, the twilight zone provides permanent crepuscular conditions, creating an ideal habitat for these animals. Deer, rabbits, and many other mammals might find the twilight zone to be perfect for their needs, with good visibility for avoiding predators, but not the harsh brightness that could be uncomfortable or dangerous. Predators and prey relationships also shift in interesting ways. In our spinning world, many predators hunt during specific times of day when their prey is most vulnerable or when their own hunting abilities are most effective. Owls hunt at night when their silent flight and excellent hearing give them advantages over their prey. Hawks hunt during the day when their keen eyesight allows them to spot prey from great distances. But in the new world, where different regions have permanently different lighting conditions, predators might specialize geographically rather than temporally. Some predator species might become exclusively dayside hunters, while others focus on the night side, and still others might specialize in the unique conditions of the twilight zone. This geographic specialization might lead to the development of distinct subspecies or even new species over time, as populations of animals become adapted to their particular region of the planet. Animals living on the day side might evolve different characteristics from their relatives on the night side, developing traits that help them succeed in their particular environment. Over many generations, this could lead to a more diverse and regionally specialized fauna than what we see in our spinning world. The aquatic life in rivers, lakes, and ponds also adapts to the new conditions. Many aquatic organisms, from algae to fish, have daily rhythms that are tied to the cycle of day and night. Some algae photosynthesize during the day and respire at night, while many fish are more active during certain times of day. In a new world, these patterns become more geographically determined. Bodies of water on the day side might develop ecosystems dominated by organisms that thrive in constant light, while those on the night side become havens for creatures that prefer darkness. The boundary waters, those lakes and rivers that span the twilight zone, might become particularly interesting ecosystems. Here, aquatic life might experience a gradient of lighting conditions, from the bright conditions near the day side to the dark conditions near the night side. This could create unique opportunities for different species to coexist in the same body of water while occupying different light zones, leading to more complex and diverse aquatic communities. Even the microscopic life of this new world undergoes fascinating adaptations. Bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms often have daily rhythms that help them coordinate their activities with their environment. Some bacteria are more active during certain times of day, while many fungi release their spores at specific times to maximize their chances of successful reproduction. In the stilled world, these temporal patterns might be replaced by spatial patterns, with different microorganisms dominating different regions based on the local environmental conditions. The soil itself, that living ecosystem beneath our feet that supports all terrestrial life, also changes in response to the new conditions. Soil organisms, from earthworms to microscopic bacteria, often have activity patterns that are tied to daily temperature cycles and moisture changes. In a new world, these patterns become more stable and predictable. Soil on the day side might warm gradually and remain consistently warm, supporting different communities of soil organisms than the cooler soils of the night side. The twilight zone soils might provide moderate, stable conditions that are ideal for certain types of soil life. As time passes in this new world, we might observe the emergence of entirely new ecological relationships and communities. Without the constant mixing and changing that comes from daily cycles, different regions might develop more specialized and stable ecosystems. The day side might become dominated by sun-loving species that form tight, efficient communities adapted to constant light and warmth. The night side might develop into something resembling polar or deep forest ecosystems, with communities of organisms specialized for low-light conditions. The twilight zone might become the most diverse region of all, where species from both extremes meet and interact in the perfect lighting conditions of eternal sunset. This slow transformation of life on Earth represents one of the most remarkable aspects of our thought experiment. It shows us how adaptable and resilient life can be, how it can find new ways to thrive even when the most fundamental conditions of existence are changed. In this gently stilled world, life doesn't just survive. It discovers new possibilities, new ways of organizing itself, new patterns of beauty and complexity that were never possible in our spinning world. The pace of these changes would be gradual and peaceful, allowing each species time to adapt and find its place in the new order of things. There would be no sudden extinctions or catastrophic collapses, just a slow, graceful transition as life learns to dance to a different rhythm, one measured not in hours and days, but in the deeper patterns of geography and climate, in the slow circulation of air and water, in the eternal constancy of sun and stars in their new fixed positions in the sky. In this world where Earth has found its perfect stillness, perhaps nowhere is the transformation more breathtaking than in the vast canvas of the sky above us. For all of human history, we have looked up at a sky that changes constantly, clouds that race across the blue expanse driven by winds that spiral and swirl with the planet's rotation, weather systems that chase each other around the globe in complex patterns that meteorologists study with fascination and sometimes bewilderment. The sky has been our most dynamic gallery, painting new masterpieces every hour, every day, every season. But now, in this gently stilled world, the sky begins to create art of an entirely different kind, more stable, more contemplative, yet no less magnificent in its serene beauty. Standing in your garden on what would once have been called a Tuesday morning, you look up to see a sky that is learning new ways to express itself. The first thing you might notice is the quality of stillness in the air above. Not the oppressive stillness of a hot, humid day when the air feels thick and motionless, but a profound tranquility that seems to extend upward into infinity. The clouds, those ever-changing sculptures of water vapor that have danced across the sky for millions of years, are beginning to settle into patterns that are entirely new in Earth's history. Without the complex rotating systems that once drove weather around the planet, without the Coriolis effect that twisted storms into spirals and sent them spinning across continents, the clouds are finding simpler, more elegant ways to form and move. On the day side of our stilled planet, where the sun shines with constant warmth, the air rises in gentle, steady columns, carrying moisture upward in patterns that are remarkably predictable and beautiful. Instead of the chaotic, swirling cloud formations we're used to, these rising air masses create clouds that form in long, graceful lines stretching from the heart of the day side toward the cooler regions near the twilight boundary. These cloud formations might remind you of rivers in the sky, flowing in slow, majestic streams that persist for weeks or even months. Unlike the rapidly changing clouds of our spinning world, which form and dissolve and reform in patterns that seem almost random, these new clouds have a sense of permanence and purpose. They flow in consistent directions, following the steady wind patterns that have replaced the chaotic weather systems of the rotating world. Watching these cloud rivers from below, you might find yourself mesmerized by their steady, unhurried progress, like watching a very slow river flowing overhead. The shapes of individual clouds also change in this new world. Without the turbulent mixing and shearing that comes from the complex wind patterns of a rotating planet, clouds can maintain their forms for much longer periods. A cumulus cloud that forms in the steady updrafts of the day side might hold its puffy, cotton ball shape for hours rather than minutes, allowing you to watch its slow evolution with the kind of patience that our fast-changing world rarely permitted. These clouds become almost sculptural in their beauty, like three-dimensional artworks suspended in the sky, each one maintaining its character and form long enough for you to really appreciate its unique beauty. The boundary between day and night, that magical zone of perpetual twilight, creates perhaps the most spectacular cloud formations of all. Here, where warm air from the day side meets cooler air from the night side, clouds form in dramatic but gentle patterns that persist like permanent features of the landscape. These twilight clouds might glow with colors that never fade, soft oranges and deep purples, pink highlights that catch the eternal sunset light, golden edges that shimmer constantly in the horizontal rays of the sun that never moves from its position on the horizon. Living in this twilight zone, you might wake each day to see exactly the same magnificent cloud formation outside your window, like having a permanent masterpiece hanging in the sky above your home. These clouds become as familiar and comforting as mountains or hills, reliable features of your personal landscape that you can use for navigation, for marking the passage of time in this world where time moves differently, for simple aesthetic pleasure as you go about your daily activities. On the night side of the planet, where stars shine down on a world of permanent darkness, the sky takes on an entirely different character. Here, clouds still form from the moisture that evaporates from the cooling oceans and land masses, but without sunlight to illuminate them from above, they become almost invisible from below, except when they pass in front of the stars. This creates a sky that seems to have two layers: the brilliant star field above, clear and constant, and the occasional dark silhouettes of clouds drifting slowly across this stellar backdrop. People living on the night side might develop an entirely new relationship with clouds, learning to read their presence not by their visible forms, but by the way they modify the starlight. A thin, high cloud might cause the stars to twinkle more than usual, while a thick, low cloud might block out entire constellations for hours or days at a time. The movement of these invisible clouds creates a subtle, ever-changing show in the night sky, as different stars and constellations appear and disappear behind the flowing curtains of water vapor. The rain that falls from these new cloud formations is also different from what we're accustomed to in our spinning world. Without the chaotic mixing and intense updrafts that create the dramatic thunderstorms and sudden downpours of rotating weather systems, precipitation in this stilled world tends to be gentler, more steady, more predictable. On the day side, where warm, moist air rises steadily from the heated surface, rain might fall in soft, persistent patterns that last for days rather than hours. This rain doesn't come in the violent bursts of thunderstorms, but rather as a gentle, nourishing mist that falls so softly you might not even notice it beginning. This gentle rain creates its own beauty in the landscape. Instead of the dramatic contrast between dry spells and deluges that characterize weather in our spinning world, the day side might experience a more consistent moisture regime, where the rain falls steadily enough to keep everything green and growing, but gently enough that you can walk in it comfortably, perhaps even find it refreshing and pleasant. The sound of this rain might become a constant, soothing background noise in many regions, like a natural white noise machine that never stops. The twilight zone experiences perhaps the most beautiful precipitation of all. Here, where the air is cool but not cold, where the light is perfect for seeing, rain might fall in patterns that create spectacular optical effects. The horizontal light of the eternal sunset, shining through the gentle rain, might create rainbows that persist for hours or days, arcing across the sky in permanent displays of color. These aren't the brief, dramatic rainbows that appear and disappear quickly in our spinning world, but rather stable, long-lasting displays that become permanent features of the twilight landscape. Double rainbows, those rare and special treats in our current world, might become common or even permanent fixtures in the twilight zone. The consistent lighting conditions and steady rain patterns create ideal conditions for these optical phenomena, turning the twilight sky into a gallery of natural light shows that never end. Living in such a place, you might become so accustomed to the beauty of constant rainbows that they become as familiar and comforting as the sunrise once was in our spinning world. Snow, too, takes on new characteristics in this transformed world. On parts of the night side where temperatures drop below freezing, snow might fall in patterns that are remarkably different from the blizzards and snowstorms we're familiar with. Without the intense low-pressure systems that create heavy snowfall in our rotating world, snow might fall more gently and consistently, creating landscapes of pristine white that accumulate slowly over long periods rather than being dumped in dramatic storms. This gentle snowfall creates winter landscapes of extraordinary beauty and tranquility. The snow might fall so quietly and steadily that it seems almost magical, accumulating on trees and buildings and open fields in perfectly even layers that never get disturbed by the violent winds of winter storms. Walking through such a snowy landscape might feel like moving through a crystal palace, where every surface is perfectly decorated with snow that looks as if it has been carefully placed by an artist rather than deposited by chaotic weather. The aurora, those spectacular light shows that dance in the polar skies of our spinning world, also change in this new environment. The aurora is created when charged particles from the sun interact with Earth's magnetic field. And while Earth's magnetic field remains essentially unchanged in our thought experiment, the way these particles interact with the atmosphere might be subtly different. On the night side of the planet, especially in regions that correspond to the former polar areas, the aurora might become more prominent and visible, creating permanent light shows in the star-filled sky. These night-side auroras might take on new forms and patterns, no longer constrained by the rapid rotation that once shaped their dance. Instead of the quick, flickering movements we're used to, these auroras might flow and undulate more slowly, creating curtains of green and blue and purple light that wave gently across the sky like cosmic flags blowing in a celestial breeze. People living in these regions might plan their evening activities around the aurora displays, using the natural light show as a source of illumination and beauty in their permanently dark world. The stars themselves, while unchanged in their essential nature, become more prominent and meaningful in this new world. On the night side, without the light pollution that would come from the day side, and without the constant rotation that makes stars appear to wheel across the sky, the night sky becomes a stable, permanent map of the cosmos. Constellations no longer rise and set, but occupy fixed positions in the sky, making them reliable landmarks that people can use for navigation and timekeeping in ways that were never possible in our spinning world. Children growing up on the night side might learn the stars the way children in our world learn the layout of their neighborhood. Each star and constellation would have its permanent address in the sky, never moving, never changing, always there when you look up. This could lead to a much more intimate relationship with the cosmos, where people know the stars not as distant, moving lights, but as permanent companions in their daily lives. The moon, still orbiting Earth as it always has, creates particularly beautiful effects in this stilled world. On the day side, the moon might be visible during certain parts of its orbit, appearing as a pale disk against the bright blue sky. Its presence subtle but constant during those periods when it shares the sky with the sun. On the night side, the moon becomes an even more important presence, providing periods of bright illumination that create natural cycles of brighter and darker nights as it waxes and wanes through its phases. In the twilight zone, the moon creates perhaps the most magical effects of all. When the moon is visible in the twilight sky, it adds its own gentle light to the eternal sunset, creating layered lighting effects that change subtly as the moon moves through its phases. A full moon in the twilight sky might create lighting conditions that are perfectly balanced between the golden light of the sunset and the silver light of the moon, producing an ambience that is unlike anything in our current world. The interaction between moonlight and the persistent cloud formations of this new world also creates unique visual effects. Moonlight filtering through the stable cloud rivers might create patterns of light and shadow that persist for the entire duration of the moon's visibility, painting the landscape below with slowly shifting patterns of silver and black. These moonlight patterns might become as familiar and meaningful to people as the patterns of sunlight and shadow are to us in our spinning world. Atmospheric phenomena that we rarely see in our turbulent, rapidly changing world might become common in this more stable environment. Sundogs, those bright spots that sometimes appear on either side of the sun, might persist for much longer periods in the steady atmospheric conditions of the day side. Halos around the sun, created by ice crystals and high clouds, might become permanent features in regions where the atmospheric conditions remain stable for extended periods. On the night side, atmospheric phenomena related to starlight might become more prominent and noticeable. Airglow, that faint light emitted by the upper atmosphere, might be more visible and consistent in the stable conditions of the permanently dark regions. This could create a subtle, natural illumination that provides just enough light for people to move around at night, a gentle background glow that makes the darkness friendly rather than forbidding. The seasonal changes that still exist in this world, caused by Earth's continuing orbit around the sun, even though it no longer rotates, also affect the sky in new ways. As Earth moves around the sun throughout the year, the boundary between day and night shifts slightly, causing the twilight zone to move slowly across the planet's surface. This creates a very slow but noticeable change in lighting conditions for people living near this boundary. A gentle seasonal cycle that takes a full year to complete, but provides a subtle rhythm to mark the passage of time. This slow seasonal shift of the twilight zone might become one of the most important natural cycles in the New World, replacing the rapid day-night cycle as the primary way people mark the passage of time. Communities might plan their activities around this slow movement of the boundary, celebrating the gradual approach of the twilight zone or marking the passage of the seasons as the quality of light in their region slowly changes over the course of the year. The sky in this new world becomes not just a backdrop to human activities, but a constant source of beauty, wonder, and practical information. Without the rapid changes and chaotic patterns that characterize our spinning world's weather, people might develop a much more intimate and detailed knowledge of atmospheric conditions. They might learn to read the subtle signs in the stable cloud patterns, to predict changes in weather based on small shifts in the permanent cloud rivers, to navigate using the fixed patterns of light and shadow that the steady cloud formations create on the landscape below. This is a sky that invites contemplation and study, where changes happen slowly enough that you can observe and understand them, where beauty persists long enough that you can really appreciate it, where the very stability of the atmosphere patterns creates opportunities for deeper understanding and connection with the natural world above us. It's a sky that has learned to paint with broader brushstrokes, creating masterpieces that last for seasons rather than moments, providing a ceiling of wonder and beauty for this gently transformed world below. In this peaceful world where Earth has settled into stillness, the very concept of seasons undergoes a profound and beautiful transformation. For all of human history, we have understood seasons as periods of change driven primarily by our planet's tilt as it orbits the sun. The familiar cycle of spring's awakening, summer's abundance, autumn's harvest, and winter's rest that has governed agriculture, migration, and the rhythms of life itself. But now, in this gently stilled world, seasons become something entirely different, more subtle perhaps, but no less meaningful in their own quiet way. They become less about time and more about place, less about when you are and more about where you are on this transformed planet. To understand how seasons work in our new world, imagine Earth continuing its year-long journey around the sun, just as it always has, but no longer spinning as it travels. The 23.5-degree tilt that gives us our familiar seasons remains unchanged, but without rotation. This tilt creates patterns of warmth and cold, light and shadow, that are painted across the planet's surface in geographic bands rather than cycling through time. It's as if someone has taken the familiar seasonal cycle and spread it out across space instead of time, creating a world where you can experience different seasons simply by traveling to different places. On what we might call the day side of this new world, where the sun shines constantly, the effects of Earth's orbital position become visible as slow, gradual changes in the quality and intensity of sunlight across different regions. During what would once have been the northern hemisphere summer, the northern parts of the day side receive the most direct sunlight, creating zones of intense warmth and brightness that might remind you of the height of summer in our spinning world. Meanwhile, the southern parts of the day side receive sunlight at a more oblique angle, creating regions that feel more like a pleasant spring or autumn day, warm but not intensely hot. As Earth continues its orbit and the seasons progress in their new spatial pattern, these zones of different warmth slowly shift across the day-side surface. The intense summer zone gradually moves southward as what we would recognize as autumn approaches, and the milder spring-like zones shift to occupy different parts of the day side. It's a seasonal progression that happens across geography rather than through time, creating a constantly evolving map of different climatic conditions that people can experience simply by choosing where to live or travel. Standing in one of these seasonal zones, you might notice changes so gradual that they're almost imperceptible from day to day, but profound when observed over weeks and months. If you live in what corresponds to the summer zone, during Earth's summer orbital position, you experience the most intense sunlight and warmth that this region will receive all year. But as the months pass and Earth moves through its orbit, you might notice that the quality of light gradually becomes less intense, the warmth less overwhelming, as your particular location slowly shifts into what corresponds to the autumn zone of this spatially distributed seasonal pattern. This creates opportunities for people to choose their preferred seasonal conditions in ways that were never possible in our spinning world. Someone who loves the intensity of summer might establish their home in the region that experiences the strongest sunlight during their favorite part of Earth's orbit, and then travel to follow this zone as it slowly moves across the planet throughout the year. Others might prefer the milder conditions of the spring or autumn zones, finding places where the sunlight is warm but gentle, where the conditions remain relatively stable throughout Earth's orbital cycle. The twilight zone, that magical boundary between day and night where the sun sits forever on the horizon, experiences perhaps the most interesting seasonal variations of all. Here, the tilt of Earth's axis creates changes in the angle of the eternal sunset that are subtle but noticeable to those who live in this region of perpetual golden light. During certain parts of Earth's orbit, the sun might sit slightly higher in the twilight sky, creating brighter, more golden conditions. During other parts of the year, it might sit lower, creating deeper, more orange and red hues that paint the landscape in colors that seem almost otherworldly. These changes in the twilight zone happen slowly enough that they feel more like the gentle shift of mood in a long, peaceful day rather than the dramatic transitions we associate with seasonal change. Someone living in the twilight zone might notice that their eternal sunset gradually becomes more golden and bright over a period of weeks, then slowly deepens into richer, more orange tones as Earth continues its orbital journey. These subtle shifts create a seasonal rhythm that is gentle and contemplative, marked not by the dramatic changes of temperature and daylight that characterize seasons in our spinning world, but by the slow evolution of color and mood in the sky above. The night side of the planet experiences its own unique version of seasonal change. Here, where stars shine down on a world of permanent darkness, the seasonal effects are felt primarily through changes in temperature and atmospheric conditions. During what corresponds to summer on the night side, the permanent darkness is warmed slightly by the increased solar radiation that Earth receives during this part of its orbit. The effect is indirect. The warmth from the day side is carried toward the night side by the slow atmospheric circulation patterns, but it's enough to create noticeable differences in the climate of the dark regions. A person living on the night side might experience something like a cosmic winter and summer, where the coldest periods correspond to Earth's farthest distance from the sun, and the warmest periods occur when Earth is closest to our star. These temperature variations are gentle and gradual, creating seasonal rhythms that are felt more in the comfort of one's home, in the thickness of clothing needed for outdoor activities, in the behavior of plants and animals, than in any dramatic changes in the fundamental character of the environment. The plant life in this new world develops fascinating relationships with these spatially distributed seasons. On the day side, plants might migrate with their preferred seasonal conditions, not through seed dispersal and colonization as we know it, but through the gradual shift of their growing zones as the seasonal patterns move across the landscape. A plant species that thrives in intense summer conditions might find its optimal growing zone slowly moving across the day side throughout the year, leaving behind regions that have become too mild and colonizing new areas that have reached the perfect intensity of warmth and light. This creates dynamic ecosystems that are constantly but slowly evolving, where the communities of plants in any given location change gradually throughout Earth's orbital cycle. Instead of the familiar pattern of the same plants going through seasonal changes in the same location, we might see different plant communities taking turns occupying the same geographic areas as the seasonal zones shift across the landscape. A meadow that is dominated by sun-loving, heat-tolerant plants during the peak summer period might gradually transition to support different species as the seasonal zone moves on, creating a slow but constant succession of different plant communities. Trees, with their longer life cycles and deeper roots, adapt to these moving seasonal zones in particularly interesting ways. A tree that finds itself in an optimal growing zone might experience a period of rapid, vigorous growth as the best seasonal conditions pass through its location. As the seasonal zone moves on and conditions become less optimal, the tree might slow its growth and enter a period of rest or maintenance. Some trees might time their flowering and fruit production to coincide with the passage of their preferred seasonal zone, creating annual cycles of reproduction that are tied to location rather than to the calendar. On the night side, plants develop entirely different strategies for dealing with the spatially distributed seasons. Here, the seasonal variations are felt primarily as changes in temperature and moisture carried by the slow circulation of air from the day side. Plants in the warmer seasonal zones of the night side might grow more actively, while those in the cooler zones enter periods of dormancy or slow growth. Some plants might develop the ability to sense the gradual approach of warmer or cooler seasonal conditions and adjust their growth patterns accordingly. The animals in this seasonally reorganized world face some of the most interesting adaptations of all. Migration, that ancient pattern of movement that connects distant parts of the world and helps animals find the resources they need throughout the year, takes on entirely new meanings. Instead of migrating through time, traveling to breeding grounds in spring, feeding areas in summer, and wintering grounds in autumn, animals might migrate through space, following their preferred seasonal conditions as they move slowly across the planet's surface. A bird species that thrives in spring-like conditions might spend the entire year following the zone of mild warmth and moderate sunlight as it slowly travels across the day side of the planet. These birds wouldn't need to time their migration to specific dates on the calendar. Instead, they could simply follow the environmental conditions they prefer, creating continuous, slow-moving migrations that last throughout Earth's orbital cycle. The result might be more flexible, more responsive migration patterns that allow animals to adapt quickly to changes in their preferred environmental conditions. Some animal species might become more sedentary, establishing territories in the regions where seasonal variations are minimal or where the range of seasonal change matches their adaptability. The twilight zone, with its relatively stable conditions and gentle seasonal variations in light quality, might become a haven for species that prefer predictable environments. These animals might develop more complex territorial behaviors and social structures, since they no longer need to invest energy in long-distance migration. The boundary regions between different seasonal zones become particularly important in this new world, serving as transition areas where animals can find a range of conditions within a relatively small geographic area. An animal that needs both the intense sunlight of the summer zone and the milder conditions of the spring zone for different parts of its life cycle might establish territories that span these boundaries, allowing it to access different seasonal conditions simply by moving short distances rather than undertaking long migrations. Marine life also adapts to these new seasonal patterns in fascinating ways. Ocean currents, now driven by the temperature differences between the day and night sides rather than by the Coriolis effect, create their own seasonal patterns as Earth moves through its orbit. The warming and cooling of different ocean regions as the spatial seasonal zones shift across them creates opportunities for marine animals to follow optimal temperature conditions through geographic movement rather than seasonal timing. Fish species that once migrated vast distances to reach spawning grounds at specific times of year might now establish permanent territories in the ocean regions where temperature and food conditions remain optimal year-round. Other species might develop new migration patterns that follow the slow movement of temperature zones across the ocean basins, creating marine migrations that are less dramatic but more continuous than what we see in our spinning world. The weather patterns of this seasonally reorganized world also reflect the spatial rather than temporal nature of seasonal change. Instead of experiencing the familiar cycle of seasonal weather in any given location, the thunderstorms of summer, the gentle rains of spring, the snow of winter, different regions develop characteristic weather patterns based on their position in the spatial seasonal map. Areas in the permanent summer zone might experience consistent warm, humid conditions that support regular afternoon precipitation, while areas in the winter zone develop patterns of cooler, drier weather. The movement of these seasonal zones across the landscape creates gradual transitions in weather patterns that are more predictable than the chaotic weather changes of our spinning world. A region might experience a slow transition from summer-like weather to autumn-like conditions over a period of months, allowing people and ecosystems to adapt gradually to the changing conditions. These transitions happen slowly enough that they feel more like the natural progression of a very long day than the dramatic seasonal changes we're used to. This predictability creates opportunities for agriculture that are quite different from what we know in our current world. Farmers might establish their fields in regions where the seasonal conditions are optimal for their crops during the growing season, then follow the seasonal zones as they move across the landscape, establishing new fields and areas that are just entering the optimal growing conditions while harvesting from areas where the peak growing season is ending. Some agricultural communities might become nomadic, following their preferred seasonal conditions around the planet in slow, predictable cycles that take a full year to complete. Others might specialize in crops that can take advantage of the specific seasonal conditions that persist in their region, developing agricultural systems that are perfectly adapted to their particular place in the spatial seasonal map. The human communities that develop in this world of spatial seasons might organize themselves quite differently from the settled agricultural societies we're familiar with. Some communities might be permanent, established in regions where the seasonal variations are gentle enough to support year-round habitation. Others might be seasonal, moving slowly across the landscape to follow optimal conditions for their particular lifestyle and needs. These mobile communities might develop technologies and social structures that support their slow, continuous movement across the planet's surface. They might become experts at reading the subtle signs that indicate the approach of their preferred seasonal conditions, developing a deep knowledge of how the spatial seasonal patterns shift across different types of landscape and terrain. The seasonal festivals and cultural celebrations that mark important transitions in our current world might be replaced by geographic celebrations that mark the arrival of communities in regions of particular beauty or significance. Instead of celebrating the spring equinox at a specific time, people might celebrate their arrival in the zone of spring-like conditions, creating festivals that are tied to place rather than to calendar dates. This creates a world where seasons become more personal and chosen rather than universal and imposed. Instead of everyone experiencing the same seasonal progression at the same time, people can choose their relationship with the seasonal cycle based on where they decide to live and travel. Some might prefer the intensity and constancy of the permanent summer zones, others the gentle transitions of the boundary regions, and still others the contemplative stability of areas where seasonal change is minimal. It's a world where the ancient human relationship with seasonal change is preserved but transformed, where the cycles that have always governed life on Earth continue but express themselves through geography rather than time, creating new opportunities for people to find their perfect place in the great seasonal dance that connects our planet to the cosmos. In this transformed world where Earth has found its perfect stillness, perhaps no feature is more remarkable or more beautiful than the great divide that separates day from night, that magnificent boundary where light meets darkness in an eternal embrace. This terminator line, as astronomers call it, becomes not just a geographic feature, but a realm unto itself, a place where the fundamental forces that shape our planet create conditions unlike anything that has ever existed in Earth's long history. It is here, in this zone of perpetual transition, that some of the most extraordinary adaptations and most breathtaking beauty of our stilled world come to life. Imagine standing at the edge of this great divide, with one foot in the land of eternal day and the other in the realm of permanent night. Behind you, the sun hangs motionless in a sky of brilliant blue, casting sharp shadows and filling the world with the warm, golden light of what seems like an endless afternoon. Ahead of you, stars twinkle in a velvet darkness that stretches to the horizon, creating a night sky more beautiful and clear than any you have ever seen in our spinning world. And all around you, in this magical threshold between light and dark, the sky glows with the soft colors of an eternal sunset that never fades, never ends, never disappoints. This boundary zone extends like a great ribbon around the entire circumference of our planet, creating what might be the most spectacular and unique habitat Earth has ever known. It's not a sharp line where day suddenly becomes night, but rather a gradual transition zone that might extend for hundreds of miles, where the quality of light changes slowly and beautifully from the bright clarity of full daylight to the gentle glow of twilight to the star-filled wonder of complete darkness. Walking across this zone would be like experiencing an entire day's worth of lighting changes compressed into a journey of just a few hundred miles. The width of this twilight zone varies depending on the landscape and atmospheric conditions, but everywhere it exists, it creates its own unique microclimate and ecosystem. The air here is neither the warm, rising air of the full-day side, nor the cool, settling air of the complete night side, but something in between, a gentle, stable atmosphere that seems perfectly balanced between warmth and coolness, brightness and shadow, activity and rest. The temperature in this zone remains remarkably stable, never too hot during what corresponds to the planet's summer season, never too cold during its winter, creating what might be the most comfortable and pleasant climate anywhere on the transformed Earth. The light in this boundary zone has a quality that is almost magical in its beauty. It's the light that photographers in our spinning world chase desperately during the brief minutes of golden hour. That warm, honeyed illumination that makes everything it touches look more beautiful, more significant, more alive. But here, in this eternal twilight, that perfect light never fades. The sun sits permanently low on the horizon, casting long, soft shadows that stretch across the landscape like gentle fingers, illuminating everything with a glow that is both warm and gentle, bright enough to see clearly but soft enough to look upon directly without discomfort. This eternal golden hour creates photographic opportunities that would have been impossible in our spinning world. Artists and photographers from around the planet might journey to this zone to capture images in light that can be planned and predicted with perfect accuracy. A photographer could scout a location during one visit, knowing that the light will be exactly the same when they return days, weeks, or even months later. The consistency of this light allows for long-term artistic projects that would have been impossible when lighting conditions changed constantly throughout each day. The colors of the twilight zone are perhaps its most striking feature. Here, the sky displays a permanent canvas of soft oranges, deep purples, gentle pinks, and warm golds that never fade or change dramatically, but shift subtly with the atmospheric conditions and the slow seasonal variations caused by Earth's continued orbit around the sun. These colors reflect and refract through the atmosphere, painting everything in the landscape below with the warm hues of eternal sunset. Buildings, trees, water, even people's faces take on a golden glow that makes the entire zone feel like it exists in a state of permanent magic hour. The plant life in this boundary zone develops characteristics that are unique in Earth's history. Here, plants have access to continuous light that is bright enough to support photosynthesis, but gentle enough that they never need to close their flowers or protect themselves from harsh midday sun. Many flowering plants in this zone might bloom continuously, creating gardens of perpetual color that never experience the dormant periods that characterize plant life in our spinning world. The consistency of the light allows plants to develop growth patterns that are remarkably regular and predictable, creating landscapes that seem almost designed by an artist rather than shaped by the random forces of nature. Trees in the twilight zone grow in ways that reflect the directional nature of the light. With the sun always in the same position, trees develop a beautiful asymmetry, with their canopies reaching toward the light in graceful, permanent gestures. These trees might look like natural sculptures, each one shaped by years or decades of growing toward the same point of light on the horizon. Forests in the twilight zone take on a cathedral-like quality, with all the trees oriented in the same direction, their branches reaching toward the eternal sun like the arches of a vast natural temple. The water features in this boundary zone create some of the most spectacular visual effects on the transformed planet. Rivers and lakes in the twilight zone reflect the eternal sunset, creating mirrors of liquid gold that stretch across the landscape. These bodies of water never experience the changing reflections of a moving sun. Instead, they maintain constant, perfect reflections of the sunset sky, creating double images of beauty that persist day after day, season after season. A lake in the twilight zone becomes like a permanent window into the sky, doubling the beauty of the eternal sunset and creating vistas that seem almost too perfect to be real. Waterfalls in this zone create particularly magical effects, as the water catches and refracts the golden light, turning every cascade into a curtain of liquid sunlight. The spray from these waterfalls might create persistent rainbows that arch across the mist for as long as the water flows, adding ribbons of color to the already spectacular landscape. These aren't the brief, fleeting rainbows of our spinning world, but permanent features of the landscape that visitors can plan to see and artists can count on including in their compositions. The wildlife of the Twilight Zone represents some of the most successful adaptations to the New World Order. Animals that were once crepuscular, most active during the brief twilight hours of dawn and dusk in our spinning world, find themselves in paradise here. Deer, rabbits, many bird species, and countless other creatures that prefer the gentle lighting conditions of twilight now have access to their optimal environment continuously. These animals might become more active and successful than they ever were in our spinning world, their populations growing and their behaviors becoming more complex as they take advantage of the perfect conditions. Many animals in the Twilight Zone develop behaviors that take advantage of the consistent lighting conditions. Birds might sing continuously rather than just at dawn and dusk, creating a constant chorus of song that provides a beautiful soundtrack to life in this magical realm. The predictability of the light allows animals to develop more complex and sophisticated behaviors, since they can count on the lighting conditions being exactly the same day after day, allowing for elaborate courtship displays, territorial behaviors, and social interactions that require specific lighting conditions to be effective. The boundary between the Twilight Zone and the full day side creates its own unique ecosystem, where animals from both regions meet and interact. Some species might spend part of their time in the bright day side and part in the gentler Twilight Zone, moving between the two regions based on their daily activity patterns or seasonal needs. This creates opportunities for new types of animal communities to develop, where species with different lighting preferences can coexist in the same general area while occupying different parts of the light gradient. Similarly, the boundary between the Twilight Zone and the full night side creates another unique ecosystem where day-adapted and night-adapted species can interact. Animals that are active in the Twilight Zone might serve as intermediaries between the day-side and night-side ecosystems, carrying nutrients, seeds, and genetic material between the two realms and helping to maintain connections between the separated halves of the planet's biosphere. Human communities in the Twilight Zone might develop some of the most interesting and sophisticated cultures on the transformed planet. The perfect lighting conditions make this zone ideal for many human activities, bright enough for detailed work, reading, and complex tasks, but gentle enough that artificial lighting is rarely necessary. People living in this zone might develop daily rhythms that are based on their own internal clocks rather than external lighting cues, since the external light never changes dramatically. The psychological effects of living an eternal golden hour might be profound and largely positive. This is the light that makes people feel most comfortable and attractive, the light that enhances mood and creates feelings of warmth and contentment. Communities in the Twilight Zone might be characterized by unusually high levels of happiness and life satisfaction, simply because they live constantly in the most psychologically pleasing lighting conditions possible. Architecture in the Twilight Zone could take advantage of the consistent lighting in remarkable ways. Buildings could be designed with the knowledge that the light will always come from the same direction at the same angle, allowing for architectural features that would be impossible in our changing world. Windows could be positioned to capture and channel the eternal sunset light in specific ways, creating interior lighting effects that are both beautiful and functional. Courtyards and outdoor spaces could be designed to take maximum advantage of the golden light, creating gathering places that are naturally beautiful and welcoming. The Twilight Zone might also become a center for learning and contemplation. The gentle, consistent light is ideal for reading and study, while the natural beauty of the environment provides inspiration and peace. Universities, libraries, and research centers established in this zone could offer learning environments that are unmatched anywhere else on the planet. The lack of dramatic day-night cycles might allow for more flexible scheduling of activities, with people working and studying according to their personal rhythms rather than external time constraints. Artists and creative people might be particularly drawn to the twilight zone, where the perfect lighting conditions and inspiring beauty provide ideal conditions for creative work. Art colonies and creative communities might flourish here, taking advantage of the consistent lighting for visual arts and the peaceful atmosphere for writing, music, and other creative pursuits. The predictability of conditions allows for artistic projects that require specific lighting or atmospheric conditions, enabling new forms of artistic expression that were impossible in our changing world. The transportation networks that develop in and around the twilight zone might be designed specifically to showcase the beauty of this unique region. Roads and pathways could be oriented to provide the best views of the eternal sunset, with rest stops and viewpoints positioned to take advantage of particularly spectacular vistas. Tourism in the twilight zone could become a major activity, with people from both the day side and night side of the planet traveling here to experience the unique beauty and perfect conditions that exist nowhere else. The agriculture in the twilight zone might focus on crops that thrive in consistent, moderate lighting conditions. Many fruits and vegetables might grow more successfully here than in either the intense sun of the day side or the darkness of the night side. The consistent growing conditions could allow for extremely predictable and efficient agricultural systems, with crops that can be planted, tended, and harvested according to precise schedules that never need to be adjusted for changing weather or lighting conditions. The twilight zone might also become a center for communication and trade between the day side and night side of the planet. Its position makes it a natural meeting ground for people from both halves of the world, while its pleasant conditions make it an ideal place for commerce, negotiation, and cultural exchange. Markets and trading centers established in the twilight zone could serve as vital links between the separated halves of human civilization, helping to maintain the connections and shared culture that unite the species even in this transformed world. This general divide, this boundary between light and dark, becomes much more than just a geographic feature in our stilled world. It becomes a symbol of balance and harmony, a place where opposites meet not in conflict but in beautiful synthesis. It represents the possibility of finding perfect conditions, perfect beauty, perfect balance in a world that has learned to be still, to be patient, to find new forms of wonder in the absence of the familiar rhythms that once governed all life on Earth. Standing in this zone of eternal twilight, watching the unchanging beauty of the sunset sky, feeling the gentle breeze that flows between day and night, you might come to understand something profound about the nature of time and change and beauty itself. Here, in this place where the sun never sets and never rises, where the light never fades and never brightens, you might discover that some kinds of beauty are made more perfect by their permanence, that some experiences become more meaningful when they are freed from the constraint of time, that some gifts are best appreciated when they are allowed to exist in their fullness without the pressure of knowing they must end. In this world where Earth has found its perfect stillness, one of the most profound changes is not in the landscape or the weather or even the movement of the oceans, but in something far more intimate and personal, the very experience of time itself. For all of human existence, our perception of time has been intimately connected to the rhythm of Earth's rotation, to the cycle of day and night that has provided the fundamental beat around which we organize our lives. We wake with the sunrise, work through the day, rest as evening falls, and sleep through the night. Our bodies, our minds, our entire civilization has been synchronized to this 24-hour rhythm for so long that it seems impossible to imagine any other way of being. But now, in this gently transformed world, people must learn entirely new relationships with time, new ways of organizing their days and nights, new rhythms that emerge not from the external beat of a spinning planet, but from the internal rhythms of life itself. This change happens gradually and differently for different people, but it touches everyone who lives in this stilled world, creating opportunities for more personal, more flexible, more meaningful ways of experiencing the flow of time. For people living on the day side of the planet, where the sun shines constantly in an unchanging position in the sky, the familiar markers of time's passage simply disappear. There is no sunrise to mark the beginning of a new day, no sunset to signal its end, no gradual dimming of light to suggest that bedtime is approaching. Instead, the sun hangs in the same position hour after hour, day after day, providing consistent illumination that never varies in intensity or angle. The shadows it casts point in the same direction always, never moving to trace the arc that once helped our ancestors tell time by the position of sun. At first, this constancy might feel disorienting. People accustomed to using the sun's position to judge the time of day might feel lost without these familiar reference points. But gradually, as weeks pass in this new environment, many people discover a profound sense of liberation in the absence of external time cues. Without the pressure of daylight hours that are limited and therefore precious, without the approaching darkness that signals an end to productivity, people begin to organize their activities around their own internal rhythms rather than the arbitrary divisions imposed by Earth's rotation. Someone living on the day side might discover that they naturally feel most energetic and creative during certain hours, most social and communicative during others, most contemplative and restful during still others. Without the external pressure to conform their schedule to the day-night cycle, they might develop a personal rhythm that perfectly matches their own biological and psychological needs. They might work intensively for several hours when they feel most focused, then rest for a period when their energy naturally wanes, then engage in social activities when they feel most connected to others. This personal approach to time creates opportunities for much more individualized and satisfying daily routines. Instead of the one-size-fits-all schedule imposed by traditional day and night cycles, people can discover their own optimal patterns of activity and rest. Early risers and night owls, concepts that become meaningless in a world of constant light, might find that their different chronotypes, their natural preferences for when to be active and when to rest, can finally be fully expressed without social or practical constraints. The way people measure and think about longer periods of time also changes in fascinating ways. Without the regular cycle of days and nights to mark the passage of time, people might develop new ways of organizing their calendars and schedules. Some might organize their time around the phases of the moon, using the regular cycle of lunar changes as a natural timekeeper that still functions in this stilled world. Others might base their schedules on the slow seasonal changes that still occur as Earth orbits the sun, organizing their activities around the gradual shifts in temperature and atmospheric conditions that mark the passage of months and seasons. Communities on the day side might develop their own shared rhythms that help coordinate social activities and collective work. A town might establish regular gathering times based on local customs rather than external time cues, perhaps coming together for markets or festivals or community meetings according to schedules that reflect the community's particular needs and preferences. These social rhythms might be more flexible and responsive than the rigid schedules of our spinning world, adjusting naturally to the changing needs and moods of the community. People living on the night side of the planet experience their own unique transformation in their relationship with time. Here, where stars shine down on a world of permanent darkness, the absence of the sun removes even more of the traditional time cues that people have always relied upon. Without sunrise or sunset, without the gradual brightening and dimming that once marked the passage of hours, people must find entirely new ways of organizing their time and activities. But this permanent darkness also creates opportunities for new kinds of time awareness. The stars, fixed in their positions rather than appearing to wheel across the sky as they do in our spinning world, become reliable reference points for marking the passage of time. People might learn to use specific constellations as timepieces, organizing their schedules around the positions of particular stars or the appearance of celestial events like meteor showers or the phases of planets. The moon, still orbiting Earth and going through its familiar phases, becomes an even more important timekeeper for people living on the night side. The regular cycle of new moon, first quarter, full moon, and last quarter provides a natural calendar that continues to function regardless of Earth's rotation. People might organize their longer-term activities around lunar cycles, planning projects and celebrations and important life events to coincide with specific phases of the moon. Living in permanent darkness might also enhance people's awareness of their own internal biological rhythms. Without external light cues to override their natural chronotypes, people on the night side might discover sleep and activity patterns that are more closely aligned with their individual biological needs. Some might find that they naturally follow cycles that are longer or shorter than the traditional 24-hour day, finally able to express their true chronotype without the constraints imposed by Earth's rotation. The artificial lighting that people on the night side use to illuminate their activities might be designed to support these more natural, individualized rhythms. Instead of bright, constant lighting that attempts to replicate daylight, communities might develop lighting systems that can be adjusted to support different activities and moods. Warm, dim lighting might be used for restful activities, brighter lighting for work that requires visual attention, colored lighting for social gatherings or artistic activities. In the twilight zone, that magical boundary between day and night where the sun sits forever on the horizon, people experience perhaps the most interesting transformation in their relationship with time. Here, the light never changes dramatically, but it does shift subtly with atmospheric conditions, seasonal variations, and the slow movement of weather patterns. These gentle changes in the quality of light might become the primary way that people in this zone mark the passage of time. Someone living in the twilight zone might become extraordinarily sensitive to small changes in the color and intensity of the eternal sunset. They might notice that the light is slightly more golden on some days, more orange on others, that certain atmospheric conditions create deeper purples in the sky or brighter reflections on water. These subtle variations, almost imperceptible to someone accustomed to the dramatic changes of day and night in our spinning world, might become meaningful markers of time's passage for people whose eyes and attention have adjusted to the gentler rhythms of eternal twilight. The psychological experience of time also changes in profound ways throughout this stilled world. In our spinning world, the regular cycle of day and night creates a sense of time as something that is constantly moving, constantly changing, always pressing forward toward the next sunrise or sunset. This creates a relationship with time that is often characterized by urgency, by the feeling that time is always running out, that we must hurry to accomplish things before the day ends or the deadline passes. But in a world where the external markers of time's passage have been removed or greatly simplified, people might develop a more peaceful, more contemplative relationship with time itself, without the constant pressure of approaching deadlines marked by the sun's position, without the feeling that each day is a limited resource that must be used efficiently. People might discover that time can be experienced as something more spacious, more generous, more forgiving. This might lead to a greater focus on the quality of experience rather than the quantity of accomplishments. Instead of trying to fit as many activities as possible into the limited hours of daylight, people might become more interested in fully experiencing and appreciating whatever they're doing in the present moment. Activities might be undertaken not because they need to be finished before sunset, but because they are inherently meaningful, satisfying, or beautiful. The social coordination of time also evolves in interesting ways. In our spinning world, the shared experience of day and night helps coordinate human activities across large populations. Everyone experiences sunrise and sunset at roughly the same time within their time zone, creating natural synchronization points for social and economic activities. But in the stilled world, different regions have permanently different lighting conditions, which means that social coordination must happen through different mechanisms. Communities might develop their own local time standards based on their particular environmental conditions and social needs. A community in the bright day side might organize their social calendar around temperature variations or wind patterns, while a community on the night side might use lunar phases or stellar positions as their primary time references. The twilight zone communities might base their schedules on the subtle changes in light quality that mark the passage of days and seasons. This localization of time creates opportunities for communities to develop schedules and rhythms that are perfectly adapted to their particular environment and culture. Instead of conforming to universal time standards that might not match their local conditions, communities can create temporal cultures that reflect their unique circumstances and values. The experience of aging and life stages might also change in this world where time moves differently. In our spinning world, the regular cycle of days provides a constant reminder of time's passage, with each sunrise and sunset marking another step in the journey from birth to death. But in a world where these regular markers are absent or transformed, people might experience aging as a more gradual, less marked process. This could lead to a greater focus on personal growth and development rather than age-based milestones. Instead of organizing life around birthdays and anniversaries that mark the passage of calendar time, people might focus more on achievements, relationships, and personal evolution that reflect internal rather than external measures of progress. Children growing up in this world might develop entirely different concepts of time and scheduling, without the regular rhythm of school days and weekends organized around the day-night cycle. Education might become more flexible and individualized, allowing children to learn according to their own natural rhythms and interests rather than artificial time constraints. The stilled world offers humanity an opportunity to rediscover time as something that can be shaped and experienced according to human needs and preferences rather than astronomical accidents. It's a world where time becomes more personal, more meaningful, more connected to the actual rhythms of human life rather than the arbitrary divisions imposed by planetary rotation. As months and years pass in this gently transformed world, something beautiful begins to emerge from the initial period of adjustment and adaptation. Life on Earth, in all its remarkable diversity and resilience, gradually finds new patterns of harmony that are uniquely suited to this stilled planet. What once might have seemed like a fundamental disruption to the natural order reveals itself instead to be an opportunity for life to express itself in entirely new ways, to discover forms of balance and cooperation that were never possible in our spinning world. The planet settles into rhythms that are slower, more deliberate, more stable than what came before, creating a sense of profound peace that seems to emanate from the very core of this transformed Earth. The ecosystems that develop in this new world demonstrate life's extraordinary ability to not just survive change, but to thrive in circumstances that initially seem challenging. On the day side of the planet, where the sun shines with constant warmth, plant and animal communities organize themselves into stable, productive relationships that take advantage of the reliable growing conditions. Without the stress of daily temperature fluctuations and changing light conditions, plants can invest more of their energy into growth, reproduction, and the production of food and shelter for other organisms. The forests of the day side develop a cathedral-like quality, with trees growing taller and more regularly than their counterparts in our spinning world. The consistent light allows for remarkable precision in growth patterns, with trees developing perfectly symmetrical relationships to their neighbors as they compete for space and resources in predictable ways. These forests become more stratified and organized than what we're used to, with clear canopy layers that remain stable over long periods, allowing for the development of specialized communities at each level. The forest floor in these dayside woodlands becomes a garden of remarkable diversity and beauty, with some areas receiving constant bright light and others remaining in permanent gentle shade. Different zones develop distinct plant communities that are perfectly adapted to their specific light conditions. The bright zones become meadows of continuous flowering, where plants bloom throughout the year in rotation, creating an ever-changing tapestry of color and fragrance. The shaded zones develop into cool, peaceful groves where ferns and mosses create carpets of soft green that remain beautiful and stable throughout the seasons. Animal life in these stable ecosystems develops more complex and sophisticated social structures than were possible in the constantly changing conditions of our spinning world. Bird communities establish territories that can be maintained for years rather than seasons, leading to more elaborate territorial displays and more complex social hierarchies. The predictability of conditions allows animals to invest more energy in social activities, artistic displays, and cultural behaviors rather than the constant adaptation required by changing conditions. Predator-prey relationships also stabilize in interesting ways. With hunting and foraging conditions remaining consistent, both predators and prey can develop more sophisticated strategies and counter-strategies. Prey animals might establish escape routes and hiding places that remain effective for long periods, while predators develop hunting techniques that are precisely adapted to the specific conditions of their territory. This leads to a kind of evolutionary arms race that focuses more on refinement and sophistication than on rapid adaptation to changing conditions. On the night side of the planet, different but equally remarkable forms of harmony emerge. Here, in the permanent darkness illuminated only by stars and moon, life develops relationships that are based on senses other than sight. The communities that flourish in this region become masters of sound, scent, and touch, creating ecosystems that are rich in ways that our day-oriented experience rarely allows us to appreciate. The soundscape of the night side becomes incredibly complex and beautiful. Without the masking effects of daytime noises, and with sound carrying farther and more clearly in the stable atmospheric conditions, animals develop elaborate acoustic communication systems. Bird songs become more complex and varied, with different species developing distinct acoustic territories that allow multiple species to share the same physical space without interference. Mammals develop clicking, chirping, and calling patterns that create a natural symphony that plays continuously across the dark landscape. Plants on the night side evolve to be more fragrant and to rely more heavily on wind dispersal and nocturnal pollinators. Gardens of night-blooming flowers create regions of intense, beautiful fragrance that can be detected from miles away. These scent gardens become gathering places for both animals and humans, creating natural community centers where different species come together in the darkness, guided by their sense of smell to find food, mates, and social connections. The twilight zone, that magical boundary between day and night, becomes perhaps the most harmonious region of all. Here, species from both the day side and night side meet and interact, creating hybrid ecosystems that combine the best characteristics of both realms. The consistent, gentle lighting conditions of eternal sunset create perfect environments for a wide variety of plants and animals, many of which develop characteristics that are uniquely adapted to these perfect twilight conditions. The plant life in the twilight zone achieves a kind of perfection that seems almost designed rather than evolved. Flowers that bloom continuously in the golden light, trees that grow in graceful, asymmetrical patterns that seem like natural sculptures, grasses and shrubs that create park-like landscapes of extraordinary beauty and peace. The consistency of the light allows plants to develop forms that are more artistic, more aesthetically pleasing than the purely functional adaptations required by harsh or changing conditions. Animal communities in the twilight zone develop social structures that take advantage of the perfect visibility conditions. Many species become more social and cooperative, engaging in group activities that would be difficult in the harsh brightness of full day or the concealing darkness of full night. Herds of grazing animals might engage in elaborate social dances that are visible from great distances in the clear twilight air. Birds might develop aerial displays that take advantage of the perfect lighting to create natural air shows that continue for hours. Human communities throughout this transformed world also find their own forms of harmony as they adapt to the new conditions. People living on the day side often develop lifestyles that are more outdoor-oriented and agriculturally focused, taking advantage of the constant growing conditions to create abundance and security that was difficult to achieve in our unpredictable spinning world. Communities become more self-sufficient and stable, with long-term planning becoming easier when weather and growing conditions are predictable. The architecture that develops on the day side reflects the consistent lighting conditions, with buildings designed to take advantage of specific sun angles and shadow patterns. Homes and public buildings incorporate extensive gardens and outdoor living spaces, blurring the line between indoor and outdoor life. The consistent conditions allow for more experimental and artistic architectural styles, with buildings that serve as both shelter and works of art. On the night side, human communities develop their own unique character, often becoming centers of learning, contemplation, and artistic expression. The darkness and quiet create ideal conditions for astronomy, philosophy, and other pursuits that benefit from freedom from visual distractions. Communities might organize themselves around observatories, libraries, and centers of learning, becoming places where knowledge and wisdom are cultivated and preserved. The artificial lighting systems that develop on the night side become works of art in themselves, designed not just to provide illumination, but to create beauty and atmosphere. Streets and public spaces might be lit with carefully designed lighting that creates dramatic and beautiful effects, turning entire communities into living works of art. The darkness becomes not something to be fought against, but something to be worked with, creating environments that are uniquely beautiful precisely because they exist in permanent night. The twilight zone becomes a natural meeting place for human communities from both sides of the planet. The perfect lighting and comfortable conditions make it ideal for trade, cultural exchange, and diplomacy. Cities and towns in the twilight zone often become cosmopolitan centers where people from the day side and night side come together to share ideas, goods, and experiences. These twilight communities often develop unique cultural characteristics that blend elements from both day-side and night-side traditions. Art, music, literature, and other cultural expressions that develop in the twilight zone often have a quality of perfect balance, incorporating the energy and vitality associated with daylight cultures and the contemplation and depth associated with nighttime traditions. The economic systems that develop in this new world also reflect the harmonious adaptation to change conditions. With some regions having consistent growing conditions and others having consistent manufacturing or research conditions, trade becomes more specialized and stable. The day side might focus on agriculture and energy production, the night side on manufacturing and intellectual pursuits, and the twilight zone on trade and cultural activities. This specialization leads to interdependence between regions that creates strong incentives for cooperation and peaceful interaction. Instead of competition for limited resources that changes with seasons and weather, communities can develop long-term relationships based on stable, predictable exchanges of goods and services. Transportation networks develop to facilitate this cooperation, with routes designed to showcase the beauty of the different regions while enabling efficient movement of people and goods. Travel between regions becomes not just practical, but recreational, as people journey to experience the different environments and communities that have developed in each zone. The psychological and spiritual dimensions of life in this harmonious world also undergo profound positive changes. The reduction in daily stress caused by unpredictable weather and constantly changing conditions allows people to focus more energy on personal growth, relationships, and creative expression. Communities often develop rich spiritual and philosophical traditions that reflect their particular environmental conditions and the sense of peace that pervades their transformed world. People living in the constant light of the day side might develop spiritual practices that focus on gratitude, abundance, and the celebration of life's generative powers. Those in the permanent darkness of the night side might cultivate traditions of contemplation, introspection, and connection with the cosmos. The twilight zone often becomes a place where these different spiritual approaches meet and synthesize, creating new forms of wisdom and understanding. Education in this harmonious world becomes more holistic and experiential, taking advantage of the stable conditions to create learning environments that are perfectly suited to different types of knowledge and skill development. Children might spend time in different regions to experience the full range of environments and communities that exist on their transformed planet, developing a deep appreciation for diversity and interdependence. The arts flourish in ways that were never possible in our spinning world. Visual artists can work with consistent lighting conditions that allow for projects requiring precise color relationships and lighting effects. Musicians can compose works that take advantage of the unique acoustic properties of different regions. Writers and storytellers can draw inspiration from the remarkable variety of environments and communities that have emerged. Scientific research also benefits from the stable conditions, with long-term studies becoming easier to conduct when environmental variables are more predictable. The different regions of the planet become natural laboratories for studying how life adapts to different conditions, providing insights into biology, ecology, and evolution that were difficult to obtain in our constantly changing world. This harmony that emerges in the stilled world is not the static harmony of things that never change, but the dynamic harmony of systems that have found stable, sustainable ways of functioning together. It's a harmony that allows for growth, development, and evolution while maintaining the peaceful stability that comes from predictable, reliable conditions. It demonstrates that profound change doesn't necessarily lead to chaos or destruction, but can instead create opportunities for new and beautiful forms of order to emerge. Education in this harmonious world becomes more holistic and experiential, taking advantage of the stable conditions to create learning environments that are perfectly suited to different types of knowledge and skill development. Children might spend time in different regions to experience the full range of environments and communities that exist on their transformed planet, developing a deep appreciation for diversity and interdependence. The arts flourish in ways that were never possible in our spinning world. Visual artists can work with consistent lighting conditions that allow for projects requiring precise color relationships and lighting effects. Musicians can compose works that take advantage of the unique acoustic properties of different regions. Writers and storytellers can draw inspiration from the remarkable variety of environments and communities that have emerged. Scientific research also benefits from the stable conditions, with long-term studies becoming easier to conduct when environmental variables are more predictable. The different regions of the planet become natural laboratories for studying how life adapts to different conditions, providing insights into biology, ecology, and evolution that were difficult to obtain in our constantly changing world. This harmony that emerges in the stilled world is not the static harmony of things that never change, but the dynamic harmony of systems that have found stable, sustainable ways of functioning together. It's a harmony that allows for growth, development, and evolution while maintaining the peaceful stability that comes from predictable, reliable conditions. It demonstrates that profound change doesn't necessarily lead to chaos or destruction, but can instead create opportunities for new and beautiful forms of order to emerge. As we reach the end of our gentle journey through this world where Earth has found perfect stillness, it's time to pause and reflect on the remarkable transformation we've witnessed together. We've walked through forests that have learned to grow in eternal sunlight, sailed across oceans that flow in new patterns of ancient grace, and stood in the magical twilight zone where day and night embrace in permanent beauty. We've seen life adapt and flourish in ways that seemed impossible, creating harmony from what initially appeared to be disruption, finding new rhythms in a world that no longer dances to the familiar beat of rotation. But perhaps most importantly, our journey through this imagined world has given us a deeper appreciation for something we usually take completely for granted: the gentle, constant spinning of our real Earth beneath our feet. Right now, as you listen to these words, you're traveling through space at over 1,000 miles per hour, carried along by a planet that has been spinning without pause for over 4.5 billion years. This rotation, so smooth and steady that we never feel it, is one of the most remarkable gifts in our solar system, a cosmic inheritance that makes our world uniquely suited for the abundant, diverse life that fills every corner of our planet. Think for a moment about the incredible precision of Earth's rotation. It's not too fast, which would tear our atmosphere away and make the surface uninhabitable. It's not too slow, which would create temperature extremes that would make life impossible. Instead, it spins at exactly the right speed to create the 24-hour cycle that has become the fundamental rhythm of life itself. This rotation creates the Coriolis effect that drives our weather systems, mixing and stirring the atmosphere and oceans in ways that distribute heat and moisture around the globe. It generates the day-night cycle that allows our planet to heat up during the day and cool down at night, preventing the extreme temperatures that would exist if one side were always facing the sun. The rotation of Earth is what creates the beautiful complexity of our weather systems. The spiral storms that bring life-giving rain, the trade winds that have guided human exploration for millennia, the jet streams that circle the globe and help moderate our climate. Without this rotation, we would lose the intricate dance of high and low pressure systems that makes our weather both predictable enough to plan around and varied enough to support the incredible diversity of climates and ecosystems that exist on our planet. Our journey through the stilled world has shown us how the absence of rotation would change the very nature of time itself. In our real world, the spinning of Earth gives us the gift of days and nights, the rhythm that organizes not just human society, but the biological processes of every living thing on the planet. Plants open their flowers at dawn and close them at dusk. Animals time their activities to the cycle of light and dark. And our own bodies follow circadian rhythms that are synchronized to the rotation of our planet. This 24-hour cycle is so fundamental to life that it's written into our DNA, encoded in the genetic instructions that govern everything from our sleep patterns to our metabolism. The regular cycle of day and night also gives us something precious that we explored missing in our stilled world: the gift of beginnings and endings, of fresh starts and natural conclusions. Each sunrise offers the possibility of a new beginning. Each sunset provides a natural time for reflection and rest. The rotation of Earth creates a rhythm that helps us organize our lives, our work, our relationships, and our dreams into manageable cycles that feel both meaningful and sustainable. As you settle more deeply into whatever comfortable place you've chosen for this evening's journey, take a moment to feel the subtle but constant motion of the world beneath you. Though you can't sense it directly, you're spinning through space right now, carried along by a planet that is performing one of the most elegant dances in the cosmos. Earth's rotation is so smooth that the surface of our oceans forms a perfect sphere, bulging slightly at the equator due to centrifugal force, but maintaining a shape so precise that it serves as the very definition of sea level around the world. This rotation also protects us in ways we rarely consider. It helps maintain Earth's magnetic field, which shields us from harmful radiation from space and creates the beautiful auroras that dance in our polar skies. The magnetic field generated by our spinning, molten core deflects the solar wind and cosmic rays that would otherwise strip away our atmosphere and make the surface uninhabitable. Every time you see the aurora borealis or aurora australis, you're witnessing a visible reminder of how Earth's rotation helps protect and nurture the life that covers its surface. The spinning of Earth is also what makes our planet so geologically active and dynamic. The rotation contributes to the circulation patterns in our molten core and mantle that drive plate tectonics, the slow but constant movement of continents that has shaped our planet's surface over billions of years. This geological activity helps recycle carbon and other essential elements, regulates our planet's temperature over long time periods, and creates the diverse landscapes and geological formations that make Earth so beautiful and interesting. In our imagined, stilled world, we saw how life could adapt and find new forms of harmony, but we also glimpsed what we would lose without the dynamic mixing and stirring that comes from rotation. Our spinning world creates constant change and variation that drives evolution, encourages adaptation, and maintains the incredible diversity of life that makes Earth unique in the known universe. The rotation ensures that no part of our planet becomes isolated for too long, that ocean currents and atmospheric circulation patterns constantly mix and redistribute heat, nutrients, and life itself around the globe. The day-night cycle created by Earth's rotation is also what makes our planet energy efficient in a cosmic sense. By rotating relative to the sun, Earth ensures that every part of its surface receives solar energy on a regular basis, while also allowing each region to cool down during the night hours. This creates a natural thermostat that helps maintain temperatures within the range that liquid water can exist, making our planet habitable for the remarkable diversity of life that has evolved here. As we considered in our thought experiment, the absence of rotation would create a world of extremes: intensely hot on one side, extremely cold on the other, with only a narrow band of habitable conditions between them. Our real rotating Earth creates instead a world of gentle gradations, where temperature differences exist but are moderated by the constant mixing of air and water that rotation makes possible. This creates the variety of climates and environments that support everything from tropical rainforests to temperate grasslands to polar ecosystems, each with its own unique communities of plants and animals. The rotation of Earth also gives us the gift of seasons, those regular cycles of change that have inspired human culture, agriculture, and art for millennia. As our tilted, spinning planet orbits the sun, different parts of the surface receive more or less direct sunlight throughout the year, creating the progression from spring to summer to autumn to winter that provides variety and rhythm to life in most parts of the world. These seasonal changes drive migration patterns, flowering cycles, and the countless natural rhythms that connect all life on Earth to the larger cosmic cycles of our solar system. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, you can rest in the knowledge that you live on a planet that is perfectly designed for peaceful rest and renewal. The rotation of Earth will carry you from day into night at exactly the right pace, allowing your body and mind to follow the natural rhythms that have governed life for billions of years. The sun will set at the expected time, darkness will fall gradually and gently, and the stars will wheel across the sky in their ancient, predictable patterns. When you wake tomorrow morning, Earth's rotation will have carried you back into the light of a new day, offering fresh possibilities and new beginnings. The sun will rise in the east, as it has every day of your life and every day in human history, brought to you by the faithful spinning of our planet through space. The air you breathe will have been stirred and mixed by global circulation patterns driven by rotation, carrying fresh oxygen from forests and oceans around the world. The water you drink will have been purified and distributed by the great cycles of evaporation and precipitation that depend on the weather systems created by Earth's spin. Your food will have grown in soil that has been shaped by billions of years of geological processes driven partly by rotation, nourished by rain brought by weather systems that exist because of the Coriolis effect, and pollinated by insects and animals whose life cycles are synchronized to the day-night rhythm created by our planet's spin. Every aspect of your daily life is supported and made possible by the rotation of Earth, from the most basic biological processes that keep you alive to the complex technological systems that connect you to people around the world. The rotation of Earth is truly one of the most fundamental gifts we receive simply by being alive on this remarkable planet. It requires no effort on our part, no payment or maintenance or gratitude, yet it provides the foundation for everything we experience and everything we are. It's a gift that has been given freely to every generation of life that has ever existed on Earth, a cosmic inheritance that connects us to the very formation of our solar system 4.5 billion years ago. As you drift towards sleep tonight, carried along by the gentle rotation of our planet, you might find yourself filled with gratitude for this remarkable world that spins through space with such precision and grace. In our imagined, stilled world, we saw beauty and harmony, but also the irreplaceable value of the dynamic, ever-changing rhythms that make our real Earth so special. The rotation that we never notice is constantly working to create the conditions that make life not just possible, but wonderful, not just sustainable, but endlessly varied and surprising. Let yourself feel cradled by this spinning world as you settle into sleep. Earth will continue its faithful rotation throughout the night, carrying you through the peaceful darkness and back toward the light of morning. The same rotation that has brought sunset to your part of the world will, in just a few hours, bring sunrise to someone on the other side of the planet who is just beginning their day. This is the gift of living on a world that spins. We share the sun, we share the day and night. We're all carried together on this remarkable journey through space. And so, as our gentle exploration of the stilled world comes to a close, we return with deeper appreciation for the world that actually spins beneath us. Tonight, as you fall asleep, you can rest peacefully knowing that Earth will continue its ancient rotation, creating tomorrow's dawn, stirring the air and oceans, maintaining the magnetic field that protects us, and providing the steady rhythm that has made our planet a paradise for life itself. Sweet dreams on our beautiful, spinning Earth.